Good morning, friends, and welcome to this episode of the H.O.P.E podcast. Hope comes from hearing other people's experiences. Today, we're blessed to be joined by my friend Christopher St-Hilaire, who dropped out of high school at the age of 16 to play video games and eat fast food before going through a transformational period of his life and taking steps to improve it. This episode of the H.O.P.E podcast is brought to us by the Spotlight Project. The Spotlight Project is a fantastic organization run by fantastic people with the mission of raising employment for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. They create and sell beautiful jewelry, and each individual they employ has an intellectual or developmental disability and a unique story to tell. You can visit them at thespotlightprojectco.com. Again, thespotlightprojectco.com. Use the coupon code HOPE, H-O-P-E. Again, use the coupon code HOPE for 15% off your order.
There was a great article written about Chris in the Charlotte Observer, which is how I kind of found him and got connected with him. But he dropped out of high school at age 16 because, not because he wasn't intelligent, because he didn't feel like the curriculum served him. He felt like he could do more with his life.
And with that, we'll turn it over to Christopher to tell his story. Thanks again for joining us today, and I really hope you enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name is Christopher St-Hilaire, and I guess where I would begin is I was born in Manhattan, New York, and around the year 2000 I kind of made my move down here to Charlotte, North Carolina, kind of involuntarily so because my parents were coming down here for economic opportunities. And I think, the rest of the story kind of is immersed within the Charlotte world and the Charlotte, North Carolina world. And, that's kind of who I am.
How old were you when you moved down to North Carolina, and what was it like growing up down there? What kind of neighborhood did you live in? What was kind of the atmosphere and culture around you?
Right. So when I initially, I came down here when I was 5 years old. Then Charlotte has truly kind of found itself making it very hospitable, very welcoming, and a part of my identity. And I kind of grew into appreciating the more relaxed and laid back lifestyle of Charlotte, North Carolina versus New York City. I was always kind of a socially awkward kid, or a bit of a loner, and I never made a lot of friends. Perhaps in part for a number of reasons. I would say I was a hefty kid. I was a very corpulent kid, and I loved everything you can imagine. I love Twinkies, donuts, and so me being really overweight and me being socially awkward and me having a huge affinity for Yu-Gi-Oh and anime and stuff like that. There just wasn't a lot of kids in that environment that shared those interests, particularly at that age. I found one or two other awkward kids, and we kind of glued to each other, and that kind of helped sustain my social life in elementary school in particular. Another component that would be amiss not to mention was that I was an avid reader, and still to this day I consider myself a bibliophile. But back then I used to participate in the accelerated reading program, and there used to be a cash prize doled out to the top 3 students with the highest AR scores. And I never got first place, but I always would get second or third place throughout my entire school. I remember one of those nights I was kind of just glued to one of the Harry Potter books. I don't know which one. I want to say the third installment. Yeah.
Third.
And I was glued to it, and I was just thinking, man, I really enjoy reading. I really enjoy escaping reality. In that sense. And I think in part that's because, my real world wasn't my real world. I didn't appreciate my real world, and I felt as if my real world didn't appreciate me. And so these forms of escapist avenues kind of served as a way for me to become powerful. And when I was a part of Harry Potter's world, I felt a part of Harry Potter's world. I felt as a wizard. I felt his strength. And so I wanted to kind of replicate and emulate that stimulation all the time, and I figured out the medium to do that was through reading. So that's kind of where that kind of elucidates my appreciation for reading.
I can relate to that. I'm a huge fan of the Harry Potter books. not as big of a reader as it sounds like you were, but I used to listen to them on tape every night, and it was just kind of my escape from whatever was going on, and felt like I was in a different world, and my problems weren't around.
Right. And I think, in retrospect too, I really think there's something there. Like, there's something really, really significant there, because it's not just, there could be like intellectual pursuits like reading, let's say, right, an intellectual hobby like that, where people can find escape, but people can find escape in a variety of different mediums, like video games, for instance. And that also played a part in my story too, especially after I dropped out of high school. It was just it was a form of, it was healthy up until a point. It began serving as a distraction, right? It began kind of shifting my focus from the real world, and my whole world became inward. And I utilized that as a way to say, oh, the real world isn't important. And that was a mistake. But I think, if it's healthy, like if you have a healthy relationship to these escapist avenues, I think it can serve you very, very well. And reading definitely was a principal thing when I was a kid. Like, that was the thing, because I was bullied a lot. I was bullied mostly for my weight. And when I read books, I felt strong, and I felt like I mattered, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense.
But yeah, so just, I guess, moving a little bit more forward towards high school. The same trends and themes kind of continued. Again, I was still socially awkward. I wouldn't even say socially awkward. I was just kind of socially inept. Like, I didn't understand interpersonal connection. Right? I didn't understand how people went about their day, kind of, having these random bouts of conversation and dialogue. I didn't understand how that worked. And I remember vividly kind of like sitting one time in the cafeteria in a corner, as usual, and just kind of observing, like, random kids who knew each other, but who would come into the cafeteria, and they would dap each other up, and then they would engage in 5, 10, 15-minute conversations with one person, and then the same thing would happen with another person and another person and another person. And I didn't understand why and how.
And did you kind of feel like anxiety about that? One thing that always sticks out in my mind is when I was walking by someone in the hallway, and it was kind of someone I knew, was friends with, I just never knew what to say to them. So I would just pretend to look down or be on my phone. The anxiety, you could feel it coursing through your veins.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and if I'm being frank, I still feel that form of anxiety today. Like, I'm an overthinker. I'm in my head a lot, and sometimes I suspect this is for a lot of people. Like, I spend a great deal of time, sometimes more often than not, like, thinking about what I'm going to say than actually saying anything at all. Oh, yeah. And if I can't piece together something coherent, then I don't say anything, or something I think won't kind of leave an impression, or won't make this person think I'm cool in some way, right? If I can't think of it, then I won't say anything at all, and I will do as you just said, right? Like, as you did, like, I had an iPod Touch. I didn't have a phone until much later on, but I had an iPod Touch, and I would look into my iPod Touch and not look at anybody walking through the halls, like, and just kind of be that person and kind of embody this loner archetype. It was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I told myself, okay, I'm a loner, and I never proactively attempted to break that mode of thinking, right? And so it just kind of perpetuated itself.
Now, looking back in my life, I kind of realized, the stories I was telling myself back then, realized that those were all fake thoughts. And I just love, if hearing it from someone, from anyone, but especially someone who's as intelligent and as you are.
I mean, to your point too, it's just, I feel like, again, there's such a social stratification, like, during middle and high school. Like, obviously in high school, right, where it's a little bit more apparent, right? And everyone's kind of trying. I know I was, and still I feel at sometimes that I am still, right? I'm preoccupied with kind of finding my place, right, in that social hierarchy, and trying my best to, traverse upward that social hierarchy, right? And I still find myself doing that to this day, and hopefully I can find ways to rectify that. But back then, it's so overwhelming, it's so burdensome, because everyone is thinking about that, and a lot of people are, like, in the back of their mind thinking, oh, what if I say the wrong thing, or what if I do the wrong thing? And for me, it was paralyzing. It kind of pushed me towards inaction. And even though, like, I started, and at that point I had lost a decent amount of weight too, so some of my insecurities related to my weight, and just related to my interests were starting to kind of wane, but they were still there. I still thought maybe I wasn't good enough, or that maybe I deserve to be invisible.
Right, and it's such a common feeling. There's something powerful about the social hierarchy. I think that's just how humans compare themselves to everyone around them. It goes so far back in evolutionary biology, and it's so exacerbated in our generation because of social media and constantly comparing yourself to everyone you see all day. And it is, you said it perfectly, it's emotionally tiring and it's mentally tiring. You get to the point of just inaction. Like, I'd rather not even be on the hierarchy. I'd rather not even participate in society. I'd rather just remove myself.
Right. And again, that resonates with me a great deal, because for me, though, it's a very murky relationship. But video games, as I played as my medium for escaping. And I think that, in conjunction with the fact that I like to think of myself that I have a high level of individuality, and I think that emerged as a consequence of not ever being able to fit in. And because of that, and with those two things working in combination, I think that was the two things, the part of the two pieces of the equation that said, okay, I'm going to drop out of high school, because I wanted to expand my autonomy, right? And for the wrong reasons, right? I wanted to expand my autonomy to play video games, eat fast food, and stay up till 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning sometimes. I wanted that freedom, and I wanted to remove myself from the burden of a curriculum that I didn't identify with, right? That I didn't identify with, and also I wasn't excelling at. Because I wasn't, by no stretch of the imagination, I was a straight A student. I wasn't even a straight B student. Like, I had C's, I had B's, and I suspect I have some F's in my high school transcript for that 1 year that I did stay. So, a bachelor decision all around, but definitely me leaving high school was to expand my level of autonomy and to kind of really express my individuality. Again, not in the healthiest ways, and really just to play video games and to eat fast food all day, every single day. I should mention too that I always had an affinity for drawing. It was always, like, kind of a young age. Like, the thing that got me into that is that I used to watch this anime called Dragon Ball Z, which I'm sure everyone's heard of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, like, I used to draw that all the time, and that kind of what sparked an interest in drawing, particularly obviously the Japanese style of art. And I kind of, I actually very recently broke away from the Japanese style of art, but still that has played a very important role, because I used to that would be another avenue in which I would kind of express myself unmitigatingly, and just kind of put onto paper the things that I wanted to put onto paper. I would draw landscapes and have my Japanese characters, my Japanese anime characters, if you will, like in that space, and imagine myself as those characters. So I think there was this longing for freedom in that sense too, but definitely.
And we all have those escapes from society, and some are definitely healthier than others, and I'm sure those talents serve you well today.
Right, and I mean, again, like, to kind of that, I think that's a great segue too, for kind of like after I dropped out of high school, and after that, about 5-6 month period when I kind of was sick of the monotony and sick of just kind of not doing anything, almost wasting away, if you will. When I started, I got my first laptop, and I started doing all of this, how would you say, this unofficial research, right? I very much identify with the term autodidact, because, I mean, in those years, that 5-year period before I even started going back to school or started doing anything, that was what I was. I really kind of crafted my own curriculum, and I kind of studied what I wanted to learn. And one of the first important books that I read after that period was this book by the late sociologist Erving Goffman, The Presentation of the Self in Everyday Life. That book, essentially, to summarize kind of loosely and roughly, like, that book talks about social interaction, right, interpersonal communication between other people, and those how there's kind of a form of drama or a form of theatrics to that, right? We all kind of put on masks when we talk to people. And we're kind of fitting a mold, and we have an agenda when we speak to people. The agenda can be reciprocal, meaning it kind of like benefits both parties. It can be self-serving, but usually he says we have a few principal desires. One of those desires is to kind of convey our coolest selves, which I really like that line. But my thing is then, well, it's like, okay, so I don't know anything about people, right? Because I was socially inept for most of my life. After reading that book, and then also reading another book called Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards. Like, those two books helped me kind of go out, kind of get out of my shell, and I started, and people who knew me back then would tell you, I would go uptown and like ask random people this weird question, like, okay, what makes you different than everybody else? And then I would draw them. Like, I would ask to draw them, and I definitely got some strange looks when I used to do that until I showed them my artwork, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this isn't weird. But I would ask to draw them, and I think the reasons why I do that is because I'm looking for authenticity, authentic expression, just because I don't know how to play the game, let's say, like this game of communication. And I think I'm just kind of searching for something deeper in that sense. But that was kind of something that helped preoccupy my time. Like, that was the beginning. Like, after I stopped, like, I started really honing on drawing, like honing on my skill to draw, because for me that was an apparent skill that I had. Really honing in on this skill, and to start with those two books. And then another book was this book by Ernest Becker, The Denial of Death. And that book kind of talks about some of the concerns we as a species have with the awareness that comes with having the awareness of our own mortality. So we have, some of the concerns that deal with that. And after I read that book, I just had a burning desire, let's say, to consume information, to kind of learn as much as possible.
So I was just trying to figure out how to connect with people, and that's really what kind of got me passionate about human connection and the power that has over our lives and our happiness, which is really what our company is about. So I love that story. You know, the kind of mask part. Whenever you have a conversation with someone, you kind of decide what mask you're going to put on. Authenticity is the most valuable thing in the world. I think anytime you're in an authentic conversation with someone, you feel really good afterwards. And I think it's a goal for all of us to strive for, to be our authentic selves at all time, regardless of what others may or may not think of us.
Man, that's very well said, because I think too, like with the fundraising, like for me, that was a principal desire, right? As I said, like I wanted to understand it, you know? I mean, a part of it was kind of, okay, let me puzzle this part of the world together, right? Because that's all I want to do now. I just want to understand the way the world works. And this is an incredibly significant part of the world. So I wanted to puzzle that together, but also because that, as you said, that's the avenue to engender happiness, right? Social interaction, social connection, people connection. And I wanted to have authentic connections with people, because I knew that would make life worthwhile, let's say. Ignited my flame, let's say, to kind of like do something. Now, like instead of just pasting up, man, I wish I took a picture of that time, but pasting up pieces of paper all over my room with, different facts and tidbits and information and definitions from a variety of different disciplines. I needed to find some way to employ it, find some way to go out into the world and utilize it for the good. And that desire came from watching this movie called Limitless, and then from these two pieces of art. And I didn't really look at artwork, like old artwork, until then. And the two pieces of art that really kind of did this for me was one by Caspar David Friedrich, The Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, which is this really famous romantic painting from the Romanticist era. And then the other one is a Baroque painting by Peter Paul Rubens, St. George and the Dragon, which, I mean, if I can disclose this, which is what I wrote my personal Princeton personal statement essay about for Princeton. So those two pieces of artwork were definitely very, very important. And then the movie Limitless, minus the drugs, the movie Limitless kind of, really just showed me that, okay, if you're smart enough, right, you can do something. Like, I remember I was obsessed with that movie. If you look at Eddie Moore, right, he's in his own little abyss, right? And he's stuck in the darkness, right, in the beginning. He's just, he's this bum essentially. He's a deadbeat writer. His girlfriend leaves him, and all of these things, right? He's as bottom as you can be, right? And he kind of squanders every single day watching Bruce Lee movies and eating pizza. And then all of a sudden, I mean, he takes a shrug, and then he becomes like this incredible version of himself, right? Again, as I said, emphasis, minus the drugs. Like, I wanted to kind of facilitate that transformation, right, somehow in my own world, right? Because I recognized that, okay, well, I'm smart enough to figure some stuff out, like, and I just didn't know what to do. And I wanted to go from the abyss to kind of, transforming my everyday life, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And if you wouldn't mind talking about kind of your parents, kind of your relationship with them, or any siblings you have, and how they felt about you dropping out of school, and how that relationship went.
Right. So I think the thing about my immediate family, and when I say immediate, I mean I have a younger sibling who we say is my Irish twin because we're 11 months apart, and then I have my mom and my dad. And the thing about my immediate family is that we all have this one thing very much in common, is that we're very introverted. We're very much reserved, and we're very private. And when I say private, I mean private with each other individually, than say as a family unit. But with that being said, like when I first dropped out of high school, and then my brother did a few months later, that was the absolute topic of conversation for our family, right? Our family was submersed within that conversation. And my father in particular, was particularly resentful about it. It was kind of a very similar, kid in the island of Dominica. He was socially awkward, and he didn't have a lot of friends and stuff like that. But all he knew was that he wanted to make something of himself, right? And that kind of compelled him to come to the States, right? And his principal desire was to make something of himself, but to also make sure that if he has a family, so that our name would be kind of etched in history. And it doesn't, on any level, but small or large doesn't matter. Like we would have established ourselves here, and we have done good here, right? And so the prospect, the prospect of me dropping out and what that entailed, absolutely devastated him. And without him kind of expressing that, because he's a very unemotional and stoic person, but it devastated him. My mother, on the other hand, is, she's very, in this sense, very typical, very, very maternal, very overprotective, very concerned for our well-being first, and let's say what the future may hold. And her immediate reaction was disappointment, but not even a few minutes later. Like, to this rationale that said, well, my kids are safe. I know where they're going to be 24/7. Let's say, they're going to be in a house. I can keep an eye on them. And that was kind of her rationalizing. But my father was deeply resentful about it. Not until very, very recently, back in 2018 when I started attending Central Piedmont. But he was very deeply resentful because there were social implications for it. Like, there were social implications for it within our family alone, within the context of our family. But, just kind of external that, like what was going to craft and mold our future, right? Was it destitution? Was it, was it poverty? Whatever it was, that's what he kind of associated with, dropping out of high school, because of this prevailing negative stigma that is associated not just with dropping out of high school, obviously, but also even with community college students.
When someone kind of decides to do something different, something that's not a societal norm, on one hand, there's kind of like a status, what are people going to think about me from the parents? And then, a lot of times from the mother as well, it's just a fear of the unknown. There's so much power in just believing in people and to figure it out for themselves. And not everyone's path is the same. And so I kind of commend you greatly for following your own path, even in spite of the fact that it was not what your parents necessarily wanted for you.
I mean, my parents in particular, they come from two smaller Caribbean islands. So there's a culture of industriousness, there's a culture of obedience, let's say, and that has its pros and cons, right? But one of the things about it was, and this is something even thinking about my father now, this is something that comes up in conversation all the time, is that my father believed deeply that if you work hard, you can attain anything you want. And so for him, us dropping out of high school was us kind of breaking this, let's say, this cultural oath. That, okay, well, we're choosing to be lazy, we're choosing the easier path, right? And so I think that also kind of cultivated his disappointment. Because he knew in his mind that you have to make those hard sacrifices in order to attain anything, right? Because life is hard. Like, nothing about life is easy. Right. And if you want to succeed in life, right, you need to take the harder path. Because anything worth any value, any real value, is going to be pursued by many people. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be in competition with those people, or not even just that, it can be something that's not pursued by a lot of people, but you need to work hard towards it. It's going to be a goal has to be something that challenges you in some way. And my father just thought that, well, if you're going to drop out of high school and you're going to play video games and you're just going to eat fast food, then you're going to turn into this thing, right? Into this lesser version of yourself, not without him saying so many words, but into this lesser version of yourself, of what you could potentially become if you started to if you kind of put into order your life, right? And he was right about that, you know what I mean? Absolutely, like he was right about that, because I mean, now in retrospect, just thinking about the way I view the world, you know, and I want to touch on this too, because you talked about the unknown. Like, the way I view the world is like this field of possibility, right? And it's like you can look, and this is the reason why I'm obsessed with mountains. You can look at a vast landscape and be exposed to two things. One, how vast the landscape is, right? Wow, how powerful that is, right? So you feel very insignificant in confrontation with that, but also that, you know, well, at the same time, you can look at that vast landscape, and without being so crude, you could erect skyscrapers, right? Mm-hmm. So there's the capacity for transformation in the unknown, right? In the chaos, let's say, and that's the thing that, like, man, that's the thing that wakes me up every day.
And your dad sounds like a really, really intelligent guy, and you know, the biggest thing I always say, and you know, we look at life very similarly. Our parents that generation did the best they could with the information they had, with their beliefs, and you know, what people don't talk about enough is we entered a new world with the internet, with seeing things constantly. You know, we're constantly on our phones, getting information constantly. There's so much data. We're constantly, you know, comparing ourselves with others. We're constantly, you know, if you have a girlfriend, you're texting her every second of every day, and it's just a new world and they lived in. And we need to, you know, speak with them, let them hear our experiences, and you know, I think they'll start to realize that it's just a different world. It's not that they're wrong. It's just that it's different. It's a different world, and you know, today, I think if you find what you're passionate about, it's really easy to work really hard at it and become successful, whatever your metric of success is. And absolutely nothing comes easy in life. Life is difficult, and the hardest workers will always come out on top, as they should. But you know, in my opinion, it's very easy to work hard when you're passionate about what you're working hard about. And so that's my biggest goal. One of my biggest goals is to kind of help people, because so many people feel pressure from their parents to do things the way they want them to do it, the way that their parents think society wants them to do it. And it causes a lot of confusion, a lot of angst.
Absolutely agree. I just think, you know, it's when you follow, as you said, when you follow your passion, right, and you work hard at it, that comes easy, right? Because it comes easy to an extent, right? You're motivated to accomplish it, right?
Exactly.
Through the content isn't easy, but you're motivated to accomplish it. And I think, you know, after kind of immersing myself in artwork and just kind of and then starting to really get into philosophy, right? Because Limitless kind of pushed me to philosophy to kind of figure out, well, philosophically, how can I buttress my motivation so it doesn't wane? And really reading the works, particularly of Friedrich Nietzsche. So, like, Nietzsche and art is what kind of continually propels me to kind of wake up in the morning and accomplish the thing that I know to accomplish. I mean, Nietzsche says, and I'm going to paraphrase here, and maybe you can butcher it, but Nietzsche says that a man can bear any how if he has why, you know? And it's very true. Like, I mean, and it doesn't matter. Like, you can go through absolute torture, right? As long as your why is stronger, whatever your why is.
Viktor Frankl. So it's the exact same thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's true. And Nietzsche, you know, one of the people I love to read, because I think he really had a great outlook on human beings, and you know, a lot of his ideas are powerful to this day to read about. You know, where did the ideas of good and bad come from? Who decided what was good and bad, and why? You know, especially with judgment. You know, why do we everyone has a different good and bad? How in the world could you possibly judge other people for not living by your right and wrong? Of course, there are things that are objectively wrong for everyone, or they should be, but for the most part, everyone's line is somewhere different.
Right, and I kind of want to touch on this too. This is kind of this obviously is kind of like a tangent related to Nietzsche, but you know, Nietzsche talked about, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. Nietzsche talked about nihilism a lot. Mm-hmm. He talked about the loss of meaning, and I think there is a pandemic, right, of nihilism. Not overt nihilism, in to say that you don't think life has any meaning or anything like that, but a very subtle meaninglessness, right? Some people are lost in emotion, and I see it. I mean, I saw it all the time at Central Piedmont. You know, there's a few people out. I mean, mean, just irrefutably, there are a few people at CP who are very, very motivated, are very, very singular, right? They know exactly why they're there, and they know exactly what they want to do. But there's also a lot of people, and nothing's wrong with this, there's also a lot of people who don't know why they're going to school. And again, that's not an affliction that just kind of affects Central Piedmont, but it's an affliction that affects high school and even middle school. Like, the people who think, why am I going to school? What's the point? Why am I doing it? I don't know. I don't know how to remedy that. Like, I don't want to put on airs and think that I have some special power to help kind of rectify that. But I think that's definitely a problem of our time, let's say.
Yeah, and I have no idea how to rectify it either. My solution is just to have people talk about how they feel about it. And I think the more people we hear kind of their experiences, the more maybe a picture will unfold on a way forward that's different, and maybe inspire some people to live their lives the way that they want to instead of the way that they're told that they should.
Right. No, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. So I think then, if we can segue into Central Piedmont, when I came to Central Piedmont, I definitely had an agenda, let's say, because at that point in my life, I had already met my mentor, who was a man that I met at the Valentine Country Club, a place where I worked. And, he kind of convinced me, because, as you said, like you said, it's the narrative you tell yourself. And the narrative I was telling myself, up until that point, is that I know I could do something. I just did, and I needed someone to also believe in me to kind of convince myself, okay, like, he sees something in me, so I must be able to do something. Like, I can't, I feel like I'm worthless, right? I must have some kind of value. And he thought I did. And he kind of told me to do X, Y, and Z, and we would meet bi-weekly, and we would craft a plan, a timeline. It was him being kind of meticulous, he kind of, that kind of trickled on and touched upon me too. And so we made this detailed timeline about what to do. So when I came to Central Piedmont, I had an agenda. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to maintain a high GPA, right? And I wanted to find besides being involved on campus, I wanted to find some other extracurricular activities that were meaningful. And when I say meaningful and personal to me, but also impactful to the community at large. Because I knew that if I could do that, right, I would become a whole person, so to speak. Because I truly believe that, when an individual commits themselves to service of some kind, right, you become a whole person in the process. I mean, it's great to be an avid reader or to be an excellent artist or whatever, right? But, I think giving back to your fellow human being is something that I think can't be always expressed beyond that. Like, you just doing it, you're just I don't know, and this is going to sound weird, but you're like tilting the whole world, the small act, you're tilting the whole world towards a better destination, to a good destination versus a bad destination, by just doing something good. Because you could easily lie, or you could easily do something, you could do an easy thing that hurts people, but if you do the hard thing that's good, the whole world, even if it's not apparent to everybody, tilts in the right direction.
That's such powerful imagery, and I could not agree with you more. It's being selfless and helping others because you want them, you want their lives to get better. Tilting the world is the best way I've ever heard it put. But it's a happiness when you experience it. It's a happiness that's not, that's greater than the quick dopamine rush of winning a championship or of alcohol or drugs or sex. It's a happiness outside of that. It's transcendental, and you put it perfectly. Tilting the world. That's really powerful.
And I think I became obsessed with that. And that, to be very frank, that came from the denial of death. Because it's like, if I think, and not my only life, let's say, right, and I think this, right, then I want to play my part. I want to leave the world a better place than when I came into it. It's like, why not do that? Why do anything else? Like, why not? If you can do anything, and if you can have any value as a person, like, why not try to leave the world a better place? Right.
I think that, for me, that's my why. It's it took me a while to get there, and I definitely struggled with what my why was for a long time. But I always loved helping people, and eventually, especially when I was little, I would always, I loved helping people. I always said that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. Somewhere along that journey, I definitely lost my way, and found, my brain found other things that it was interested in, and wanted to, kind of climb that ladder of society and put myself above other people. But over the past few years, it's really come back. And with this company, it's why not? What else is there? What else is there besides making your little corner of the world a better place and tilting it a little bit more towards the positive, especially with our generation seeing everything we see on the news, on Twitter. It's there's so much negativity. We have to find and create our own positivity. We have to help others, and that's the best way to do it.
Right. So I would have to kind of backtrack to the year 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So in the year 2018, I was convinced that I needed to go to this particular spot in Robbinsville, North Carolina. And the name of the spot is the Maple Springs Observation Deck. And from that view, it is said, supposedly, you can see 3 or 4 different states from that from the high point of that vantage point, on top of that mountain. And I convinced myself I needed to go there New Year's Day because be the thing that ends the chapter on this previous life and be the barometer for my next chapter or my next life. Mm-hmm. And so I did that, and I mean, I spoke to this sentiment before, but it was like I died standing up there, right? And then I was reborn. It's just when you stand there and you're just looking at the world just nakedly and it's staring back at you. I can't, it's just, it's ineffable. I don't know how to, I don't even know how to describe it, but it moved me in a way that just still moves me today. And so as soon as I came back home, I was like, okay, I need to do something. And I was at a country club. That was my first thought. And at a country club, you have these people who are well-to-do, who are, financially successful, who are well-connected. And I thought, what's kind of like, what about these people about me? What can me as a high school dropout, who does have a GED at this point, but like, what can I speak to these people about? And so I did have an interest. I remember one of the things I used to study in my weird times, like kind of putting things all on my wall, was corporate finance. And finance was something that was very interesting in the sense that it spoke to the systems people erect, right? And, it spoke to the systems that people erect, and it impacted people's lives in a way, for good and for bad, but if you do it for good, it can transform the way people actually go about their day-to-day. And I thought it was a practical avenue, if that makes any sense. So it's one individual, I forget his name now, and I spoke to him just randomly, conversation while I was serving him his food. And, he just told me, oh, man, there's this guy who, he would be perfect for you. Like, he's always very interested in hearing stories from disadvantaged or disenfranchised young African-American men, and young African-American women too, of course, but just disenfranchised people in general. And I said, oh, what's his name? And he said, oh, it's Chris Floyd. And I don't know when he comes to the club, but if you see, he's a slender older black man. And if you see him, just you should definitely strike a conversation with him. And I think at some point, I remember asking the GM of the country club, who Chris Floyd. And he had like a profile of him, and I found what he looked like, and I was like, okay, that's what he looks like. And it wouldn't have been. It was a good minute before I ended up kind of happenstance, just kind of. Seeing him and meeting him. But I remember seeing him, he was speaking to a group of friends, and I went up to him, and I just hey, I'm interested in going to Chapel Hill. I'm interested in investment banking. I don't know. I just would like to pick your brain and gain some insight and stuff like that. And we spoke, I think, briefly for like 10 minutes. And after that, he told me, okay, well, let's meet next in 2 weeks, and we'll meet here in the same spot. And we did that, and he told me in retrospect, he told me that, he said he didn't want to waste his time. So that first session, I didn't know it, but that first session, he was essentially kind of assessing me, like, okay, is this someone I'm going to invest my time in, mm-hmm. And he determined that it was something he did, and so after that, for the better part of a year, we would meet every 2 weeks, kind of just. I would keep him posted, like things going on in my life, things related to finance, things related to school, things not related to school, like things regarding girls, things regarding organization, like everything, like literally everything I would talk to him about. So he was, an absolutely integral piece. He would, some of the advice he gave I didn't want to hear, in the sense that, I wanted to do my own thing, mm-hmm. but he was right. Like, there were some things I needed to listen to, especially one of those things I'm thinking about is patience, because I was very, very impatient. I thought about my age, I thought about my context in the world, and I thought about this carved pathway that was already kind of predetermined. And I thought the older I got, the more I deviated from that path, right? But that was not the way I needed to think about it. And so stuff like that, he would absolutely give me, critical feedback.
Honestly, this guy Chris Floyd sounds like a great guy, and someone that if resources and you've worked hard in life, you have the resources, and you want to give back. What a fantastic way to do it. To at your country club, kind of try and create relationships with the people who started out in a worse spot than you did, but still have all the intelligence, all the talent to do great things in the world. And just from talking to you, we spoke once last week, and then today, and then obviously reading the article. Christopher is clearly going to go on to do great things in this world, and what a benefit having a guy like Chris Floyd to reach out to him and help him out, kind of help him towards that path, and help navigate his way through community college. And then if Chris, you want to touch on the most recent piece of news that you got and kind of tell that story.
Right. So I mean, it's something I don't think I'm ever going to forget, and something I'll definitely be consistently reflecting on until the day I die. But May 6, 2020. And I remember I told myself weeks before the decision was going to come out that I was going to open that decision on I want to say parking deck 3 at Central Piedmont Community College, because it's the top floor of that parking deck. You get this fantastical view of the Charlotte skyline. It's a very popular spot too. And so I did two things. For the start of 2020, instead of going to Robbinsville, because I do that every Year's Day, I actually went to the parking deck. And it's really cheesy, but I went to the parking deck of Central Piedmont Community College, and I just stood there as the clock struck 12, because I knew that that was going to be the most pivotal thing that hopefully, ideally, fingers crossed, was going to happen to me that year, at least in the beginning. I did all of those things, but still at the same vein, not being convinced I was going to get accepted just because of how slim their acceptance rate is. Mm-hmm. But, the day of May 6th, I kept looking. I remember I had this app on my phone called Dark Sky, and I kept looking at that day. Like, I'm not a really superstitious person, but man, like, I just knew that the rain kind of, according to some mythological traditions, the rain is an omen, right? And if it's raining, it usually indicates bad luck and all that stuff. So I was like, oh my God, it's going to rain on May 6th. And not only is it going to rain on May 6th, it's going to rain between the hours of 4 and 7, and the decision comes out at 5, and I was just like, it's like the world is cursing me. I was so scared. Like, I was like, oh, this is bad, and So anyway, I went up. I did that anyway, and the great thing too was that when I went up to the parking deck, right, the view, the dark clouds kind of had moved off. This sounds incredibly dramatic, but
dramatic is good.
Kind of moved off. The clouds had moved off a little bit, and I could see the skyline, and I knew then too that I was like, this might be good news. And I still have a picture. I remember I sent the picture to my friends. It's still kind of drizzling outside. Like, took my laptop, put my laptop on the edge, and I went to the website, went to the application website. I tilted the lid down just a little bit, just enough where I couldn't see it, and clicked the status update. And then I looked at the skyline. Then I looked at the skyline and then opened the lid, and then I just ran across the rooftop, just screaming, "Oh my God, I got into Princeton!"
Just to put it into more perspective, not only did he get accepted to Princeton, which is an unbelievable accomplishment on itself, Christopher received a full scholarship.
Well, this year over 900 people applied, and they accepted 13 people, something like that. Again, didn't think I was going to get in at all. Like, as the article spoke to, and I mean, it's very true. I had bought so much Chapel Hill gear, like Chapel Hill t-shirts, a pennant, a sticker, decals, everything. Like, I was invested as a Tar Heel. I did not think I was going to get in at all. If I may conclude with just one thing.
Absolutely.
If there's anything I could say, the one thing I would just want people to know is that you can craft your own destiny, right? Like, really look at the world and, think deeply about it, but think about something challenging you want to confront, something heavy, if you will, that you want to lift, right? Something you want to impact, right? And remember that you're the agent of your own transformation, right? Society society can't stample upon you so much so that you cannot transform your immediate surroundings, right? You have that power. So I think I don't want to just say that for community colleges. I want to say that for everybody, because I really thought there was nothing else. I mean, there were some really dark days, right? When those first 2 years, because I wasn't doing anything with my life. I mean, I was reading a lot and getting a lot of information, but I still wasn't doing anything, and I thought there wasn't much hope. But there really is, if you have the capacity to transform, right? Everyone has an internal phoenix, right? You can be reborn again into your greatest self, if that makes any sense.
Overstate how much value there is in believing in yourself and believing in other people, believing in the people around you. Christopher mentioned it. Chris Floyd believed in him. His parents believed in him, even though they may not have agreed with his decision initially. It certainly sounds like they believed in him to make something of his life, and he certainly is. One question I like to ask people who've kind of gone through this transformational process is, what would you say your biggest failure, your biggest mistake was, and then your biggest success?
Being preoccupied with the wrong priorities, kind of generally, and I know it's very broad, but that, there are times, during this journey, there have been times when I was chasing the wrong thing, just explicitly chasing the wrong thing, right? And it's hard to know when that is, and it was doing way more harm than good. Way more harm to me as an individual and to my relationships with other people. So definitely, I wish I could pinpoint and say one thing, but it's kind of a general theme. That is my biggest mistake, and I just have to always be cognizant not to fall into that trap. My biggest accomplishment, and I don't recommend everyone doing it, just kind of to emphasize that, but my biggest accomplishment was dropping out of high school. And as strange as that sounds, because when I did, everyone told me, every single person that I had mentioned it, they gave me that, oh wow, well, there's always community college, or you can always just get a job. I always got that reaction, and everyone, that my prospects in life kind of dwindled to almost nothing. And it's strange to say, but as confounding as that may sound, that was my biggest accomplishment, because that was the right thing for me. It was the right thing for me, because I wouldn't have been who I am today at all if I had stayed in high school.
That's powerful. And just to end on these last two points. I know you touched on it a bit, but just when you were kind of in that period, those first few months after dropping out, what were you kind of internally feeling? I know there's probably a lot of stress from just parents and family talking about it, people telling you you should do this or that. What were you feeling, and what kept you believing in yourself that you made a good decision? Even during that period you were playing video games, and what really drove you forward then? And then secondly, I know you touched on it before, your why, but what drives you forward now?
Right. So the way I think the prevailing feeling, if you will, that I had back then was liberation. It petulant liberation, because it was for the wrong reasons in the beginning anyway, to play video games and to kind of do my own thing and not do anything hard. But it was liberation. I felt free. I felt free from the confines of having to constantly worry about what I'm going to say, or what friends I'm going to try to make, or who am I going to run into in school, and kind of free from those social dynamics, free from this curriculum that I didn't think that was serving me, and free from the confines of a building that I thought were a prison, right? And again, that's not for everyone, but for me, that was what it was. And what drives me now is I have this personal philosophy about, again, lifting something heavy. That's kind of, I've really now kind of tied my life to this goal, right? To this mission, my life's mission. And my mission now, that is kind of what drives me up, that gets me up every single day, is to kind of transform the chaos, right, into something orderly, right? Not just orderly, but to transform it into something that overall tilts the world towards the good. So that's kind of what keeps me going every day.
A fantastic story, and once again, thanks so much to Christopher St-Hilaire for joining us. Thank you all for coming to listen. Please subscribe, please download, please share it if you enjoyed it. And until next time, love y'all.